Good morning, creators, and welcome to another Uefn tutorial. In this episode, we're going to be creating a basic verse voting UI. Before we begin, my Discord is linked down below. That's a great place to chat with me, to ask for tutorials, help, assistance, just hang out with the community. We're really trying to build a big Uefn community there, so feel free to join. It's linked below, so if you're interested, join. Alright, to begin, we're going to open up our Verse Explorer. We're going to add a file to our Verse project, add a new Verse file project. I'm going to name this one Voting UI Device and create. So once you open that up, you can double click to open it up. Give it a second. There are a few libraries we need to add. So using /verse.org/assets. We also need Fortnite.com/UI. So erase this, make it UI. We also need Unreal Engine /temporary/spatial math. That's spatial math. And we also need Unreal Engine /temporary/UI. And I would also add verse colors. I usually just go for named colors, so I do /colors/named colors. But if you want to have custom colors, you would use just the colors. So that's pretty solid. The first thing I want to discuss is our voting device is going to have two inputs, which are going to tell it what to do at certain moments. And those inputs are going to be a start voting and stop voting trigger. So we're going to have @editable. @editable means that you can see it in the editor. You can put it in. So like for a device, you would put the device in when you're in the editor once you place the device down. So @editable, start voting trigger, and then add a colon and do trigger device and set that equal to trigger device with curly brackets. We're gonna copy this so we don't have to type it again. And instead of start, just say stop. Those are your two triggers. One's gonna start voting, the other one's gonna stop voting. Pretty simple. Those are two inputs. In your onBegin function here, we need to have calls to our start voting and stop voting functions. So start voting trigger dot triggered event dot subscribe, and we're going to say start voting. Same deal here. Stop voting trigger dot triggered event dot subscribe, stop voting. And we haven't declared these functions yet, so it's going to give you some errors. We're going to do that now. So start voting. We're going to add parentheses and add a colon, and we're going to return nothing. So we're going to put void here, set that equal to. And anytime I create a function, I like to have a print statement at the start so I know what functions are called. So we're going to do print start voting. That way, once it starts voting, it's going to say that it starts voting. We're going to create the stop voting function as well. Same thing here. Print stop voting. You'll notice there's still an error here. It is asking for a parameter of type optional agent because that's what the trigger device passes when it's triggered. To fix this, just add maybe agent of type optional agent and add this to the other one as well. And now it can properly call both functions whenever the trigger is triggered. Anytime I'm working with a UI, it's very important that you get the design down and know all the anchors and widgets and everything you need to have a successful UI in Verse. And in order to know that, I usually create a widget blueprint and lay out the widgets like this. Just experiment till I find what works right. I'm actually going to show you how to do this. So go into your content browser and you're going to want to right click and add a user interface blueprint, widget blueprint. Do a user widget. You can name it if you want. Sometimes I'm just lazy and I don't. All right. So you have this empty blueprint here. The first thing I always place down is a canvas panel. It's the best starting widget. And you got to think of it in like as in like modules. So let's say that our basic voting module has an image of the thing we're voting for, a text block that says what we are voting for, and then a button that allows you to select the vote. So in that case, let's go ahead and place those down. So we have a text block, we have an image, and we have a button. We'll do button loud. Go ahead and size the content on this. It works. That's fine. If you want to drag in a special texture that you have, you can just go into your content browser and drag it in. So I'll just go ahead and drag that in now. And so you have these. How do we organize them? One of the best tools that you can use is a stack box, because it automatically aligns images, fills them in, and there's no collisions. If there's any size changes because of HUD scaling, it adjusts for that. So I highly recommend using a stack box. So stack box here. Let's go ahead and put our info in the stack box. So we have the image in the stack box, button loud in the stack box, and our text block in the stack box. You're going to immediately notice this is janky. It's going left to right. That's most likely not what you want. So go to your stack box, and you want to set orientation to vertical. That way it's stacking up and down. One thing to note is that the widget you have at the very top of your stack box is the one that appears at the top. If you look at your folder down here, it shows the order in which they will be stacked. With this, I highly recommend doing a horizontal alignment that's centered and a vertical alignment that's centered. If you use these fill to the entire stack, which is very useful in some circumstances, but not optimal when you're using an image, because it's probably going to stretch the image. So do the centered alignments, and that's going to give you the best chance at having a good image here. So now you can adjust the image size here. Let's say I want 200 by 200, and you'll see perfectly square, looks great, amazing. If you ever want to move the widgets, like I want this button to be below the text block, I want the text block to be in the middle, there's arrows here, you can just move them down. Pretty cool. Once again, with the text block, I want to center these, and also with the button, I want to center it so that it doesn't stretch to the edges. The rule here is that it will always size to content if you have the center on. So if I change this to like one letter, it's going to be a smaller button. If I change it to a lot of letters, it's not necessarily going to size the content unless you go into your stack box and then click on size the content. But you're going to see later on, we don't really need that in this instance because we have other things we're going to put on this canvas. Another thing you can do, you'll notice that some of these are just too close for my taste. So you can add padding. Padding just adds a space between objects. So if you want to have padding above this text block to prevent it from being so close to the image, just go to top and then put in a number. That looks great. Go to bottom, put in another number. And now it's pretty spaced out. Not much collision here. It looks actually pretty good. So that's your stack box. Great for voting modules. What if you wanted to create another stack box? Let's do another one. I'm just going to go ahead and copy all this and then paste it in. To paste it in, I first selected the entire thing in this folder right here, and then I copied, and then I clicked onto the the little canvas visualizer here. Then I paste it. For some reason, I can't get it to work when I paste into this, so just click into your canvas and it'll work better. With this in, you might want to change your logo or your image. So I have like new logo, like that. You'll notice scale might not be what you want, so I revert it to my default, which is 200 by 200. For some reason, this button's not working. It doesn't look yellow for some reason, but that's okay. So now you have your two widgets, but you'll see that they aren't like quite aligned, and it's kind of ugly to like try and meticulously align them. So what I like to do is add another stack box. This one's going to be horizontal, and you're going to put your voting module stack boxes into this new one. So this stack box goes into this one, and your other one also goes into this one. So you'll see the stack box now fits very well. Let's go ahead and size the content. That's just easier to deal with. So now they are well aligned, which is great. That's probably what you wanted. But you also notice that like these are too close, way too close. I don't think that's something you want. So I would go into your stack boxes and add a little bit of padding. So, you know, maybe add padding to the right, be like 20. And this one to the left to 20. Oh, not the image, my bad. Click on your stack box. Make sure it's your stack box, not the image. And you'll have that. And that'll actually look pretty good, pretty solid. One last thing. If you just had these widgets on the player screen, it might be harder to read. So what a lot of people want to do, I bet, is have a border or background image behind this. So I have a basic border here. You could try manually align this, but there's another widget that helps a lot with this, which is the overlay widget. So we can place that down. The way the overlay widget works is you can place in a widget, and whichever widgets are on top are the ones that appear, I believe, at the bottom of your overlay. And the ones that are at the very bottom are the ones that appear at the very top layer of your widget. And we're about to prove that. Prove or disprove that. So let's put our stack box, the big one, and the image in this overlay. So let's adjust our image size. And let's do fill. I want our overlay to size the content so that it fills our content. And our image, keep it a normal size. Like that. That looks good. Yeah, you see the stack box was lower on the overlay, so it appeared on top, at the very top, instead of the border appearing above. So this is decent, but you also need some more things like a back button, which we could place down here. Back button, basically to cancel or, you know, just get rid of your UI, or just submit your vote, I guess. And we could fit that in here, but it's probably best if we just adjust our overlay to fit the content. So how about instead of size the contents, we specify a size like this, or even better, use our image. Even better, just ignore what I just said. Size the content on your overlay, but use your image for sizing the overlay. So you can center it or whatever. But the size is going to determine, size of this image is going to determine the size of the overlay, because it's larger than all the other widgets. So eventually you'll get that well adjusted, In your overlay, I recommend setting alignment to 0.5 and aligning an anchor to the point you want the UI to be, just where you want the center of the UI to be located. So with the anchor and alignment of 0.5 set, you could change all these position and size nodes to 0, and you'll see it's perfectly centered around the anchor. So if you move the anchor to a random spot, let's say this spot, change all the position and size nodes to 0, it's always going to be centered on this anchor point. So that's a great way to guarantee your UI stays in place. For the stack box, we want to make sure that we have centered, so it's not like on the edge or looking gross or anything. And you might want to add some padding so that it's boosted up. You can have it from the top and then add a top padding if you want, just until you get what you want. We're going to put our back button in our overlay. And similar deal, we want to have a bottom vertical alignment and also centered horizontally. And we're going to add a little bit of padding to the bottom, just say like a 10, maybe 50. 50 looks pretty good. And if you want to adjust the size of your overlay, your image basically controls that. So you can change the size like here. And it's very convenient, honestly, changing the size of the image for this. Let's just set it to like 500 and then 600. That looks good. Yeah. Okay, so now you have this set of widgets that shows basically the order in which you need to be creating these widgets and where you need to put them. It's a great guide for Verse, which is why I love using this system. So once you're inside of your Verse project, let's go ahead and start by making a basic canvas making function. So we're going to call it make canvas, and we're going to return a canvas. And let's go ahead and create a canvas. So we're going to say my canvas is going to be a canvas like that. And then we're going to return my canvas once we're done. Cool. So inside of our canvas, we have an overlay. So that's the only thing that is in this canvas. So slots is equal to array. And then we're going to have a canvas slot. And our widget is going to be my overlay, which is something we have not created yet. So we're going to create my overlay, which is going to be of type overlay. And now it's there. It's good. If you open up your overlay, you're going to notice we have some canvas slot info on this side. So our anchors, we have the margins, which we're not using because like I mentioned, we don't need them. And we have our alignment, size to content. So we need to declare those inside of this canvas slot we just created. So anchors is equal to anchors. Let me expand this so you can read it. And then we're going to have curly brackets. We're going to define the minimum anchors as a vector 2. And our vector 2 is going to have x equals 0.5 and y equals 3875, 0.3875. Our maximum is going to be the exact same. So just add a comma after that. Maximum. Then paste it down. Like that. And there you go. Those are your anchors. We also have margins. Margins by default are zeros, so we don't need to declare those here. Alignment is also a vector 2. So x is going to be equal to 0.5. And y is going to be equal to 0.5. This is going to say that the widget is centered instead of starting at the top left. And we also want to size the content. Remember that the background image we've created is one that determines the size of the entire overlay. So that size of content is going to be true. And that's all we need for our canvas. We can go ahead and minimize that. So inside of our overlay, we have an image, which is our background image. So we're going to have slots is equal to array. Instead of canvas slots, now we have overlay slots because this is an overlay widget. So overlay slot. If you're ever curious about where I'm getting all these names from, if you open up the Unreal Engine Digest, you can search for overlay. See, the overlay has a slots, which has overlay slots. And the overlay slot has a widget, horizontal alignment, vertical alignment, and padding, as we saw in the editor. So we just need to make sure we define all of these that we want to use. We always have to define a widget. And in this case, since we're using the background image on top of the widget, or on top of the overlay, or on the bottom of the overlay, my bad. We're going to have a texture block, add curly brackets, and default image is going to be the name of the image you have in your folders, content browser. If you want to see what the names are supposed to be, there's a handy folder here called Assets Digest, and you'll see all of your textures, meshes, and materials inside of this folder. For the texture block, you can only use textures, so no materials, obviously no meshes, so only look at your textures here. Our border or background image is called garbage border, so we are going to say garbage border here. And it has to be the exact name that it shows in the assets folder here, or else it won't work. We also need to declare our default desired size, which is going to be a vector 2. And I believe we set this to 600 and 500 right here. So let's go in 600 and then 500. Make sure you declare X and Y. All right. If you're curious where I got these values from, once again, go into your Unreal Engine Digest, search for texture block. You'll see it has default image, default tint, default desired size, default horizontal tiling, vertical tiling, some dynamic stuff like get and set. You could explore that at your own leisure, but that's where I got them from. So we're still in our overlay slot, and if you go back into our editor here, you see we have padding, horizontal alignment, vertical alignment. Our padding is all zeros. I know that for sure. So we don't need to define our padding. By default, it's all zeros. But we do need to find our horizontal alignments. So horizontal alignment is equal to horizontal underscore alignment dot center. If you're curious what the options are called, once again, go into your Unreal Engine Digest and navigate to your overlay slots. You'll see horizontal alignment. Oh, another trick. If you hold Control and hover over something, it'll give you this little link that immediately teleports you to the spot in the digest that it's created, so you know where to find it. So horizontal alignment, you'll see it has center, left, right, and fill. This correlates to all the ones you see here. We're using center here, so center, vertical alignment is vertical alignment dot center. That's great. That's our entire overlay slot. Looks great, honestly. But we do have other things in our overlay, which I guess we only have the button and the stack box. So let's add the button here, the back button. Overlay slot. our widget is going to be the back button, which we're going to declare up here so we can use some, we can do some stuff with it in a bit. So back button is going to be equal to button regular. We like the blue one, so it's going to be button regular. And we're going to have default text on the back button be balt. Why is it balt? Back default text is equal to, and say back. You'll notice it has an error here because it expects it to be a typed message. Anytime it asks for a type of message, I create a very basic function to convert a string to a message. Just copy this verbatim. S2M, which is my lazy way of writing string to message. You need to have in your parentheses string, S of type string, which is a parameter that is of type string. It's going to return a message. Set that equal to quotation mark, curly brackets. Inside of the curly brackets, put the S, and then close that quotation mark. After the S2M, you need to add localizes, like that. And that should work very well. I already have a function named S2M, so I'm going to say S2M2. And go ahead and call it here. S2M2 back. So now we have our back button. The text says back. Works very well. So now we have our back button. Make sure you hover over it in your editor to see what information we need to change. We have padding needs to be 50 from the bottom. The alignment needs to be centered on horizontal, but locked to the bottom vertically. So just going to copy these so I don't have to type them out again. And padding, we're going to add this time. So padding is going to be equal to margin. And whenever you want to change a margin, it's going to be top, left, right, and bottom. And you initialize those with zeros or whatever value you want. It has to be a float. So say my bottom is 50.0. The other ones are at 0. By default, they're 0, so I don't have to declare them here. Only the ones that I want to be non-zero, so 50. And finally, we have our horizontal alignment, which I want to just double check. You have center, left, right, fill. And vertical alignment is center, top, bottom, fill. Okay. So we want center for horizontal, and we want bottom for the vertical. So that should be well aligned. And lastly, we have one more overlay slot, as you see in our blueprint here, which is going to be our stack box that handles all of the voting modules. So overlay slot widget is equal to, let's call it voting stack box. And we're going to create that right here. Voting stack box is going to be equal to a stack box. See, it has to initialize data member orientation. So to do orientation is equal to orientation dot, and in this case we're using a horizontal orientation, so horizontal, and that's your orientation initialized. You have your widget here. Let's just double check our overlay slots or stack box to see what overlay information we need to add. We have padding. Our top needs to be 40, horizontal needs to be centered, and vertical needs to be at the top, according to our blueprint. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this because I'm very lazy and I don't want to have to retype everything. So top is going to be 40. Horizontal alignment is going to be center, and vertical alignment is going to be top. Great. So that's your overlay. That's your canvas. But now you have your voting stack box. So now you have the great opportunity, which is one of the best opportunities in coding, which is to reduce your code when you're dealing with the stack boxes. Um, you see that these stack boxes are all the same. They have a texture, they have a text block, and they have a button. Since these are the same, let's just like create a class to handle everything for us. Makes it much easier. So we're gonna call this class a voting candidate, and we're gonna set this as a class, of course. And inside of this, we want to have two variables. One is the texture. So this is gonna be of type texture, like that. We also want to have a string, which is going to be our name. So name of type string. That's the name of the candidate. And this is the texture that's going to be associated with this device. We want to add two things here. First is going to be a get button function. And this is going to return a button loud, which is the yellow button that we wanted to add. And we're going to return button loud. And, you know, you can set the text to whatever you want because it's going to be updated. I would set it something like voting or votes 0, for example, because we want to count the votes. S2M2. No, S2M. We gotta define this as default text. That's my bad. Default text is going to be vote 0. Very simple. So we're going to return this button loud. The reason we're returning that is because we need to do some verse stuff with our button or else it's going to have issues. And we also want to create a function to create our stack box that has the image, the text, and the button. So make stack box, or you can call it get stack box if you want to keep the naming conventions the same. We're going to pass our button that we create here into it. So we're going to call this my button of type button loud. And it's going to return a stack box. So return stack box. Stack box. So orientation, as we see in our blueprint widget, is vertical. So orientation.vertical. And we also have to have our stack box slots. So slots is equal to array. We have a stack box slot. Whatever you want to have at the top here should be your first stack box slot. In this case, it's going to be a texture. So widget is going to be our texture block. And we're going to have a default image here. We're going to set that to our texture, the one that we have referenced here. So texture right here is going to be the one we use here. We want our proper size. If you remember, go into our image. We set our image size to 200. So default desired size is going to be a vector 2. We're just going to have X as 200 and Y as 200. That's great. That's about all you need for the texture block, I'm pretty sure. But you do need to define the alignments and the paddings if you have paddings, which don't believe we have paddings in this version. So add horizontal alignment. That's gonna be a horizontal alignment, like I said. We're gonna do center. Vertical alignments. Vertical alignment. I should really just copy and paste this, to be honest. That center. Pretty good. That should be all you need for that texture block. The next part we would need to add is the text block, the one that has the name of our thing we're voting for. So we're going to have a stack box slot. Once again, widget is going to be a text block. And inside of our text block, we're going to have default text, which is going to be S2M of name. So in brackets, put the name and then close quotation marks. This way it'll grab the actual string from the variable, and it'll print out the correct name. Pretty simple. You also need to have default text color, and we're just gonna do white. That's really basic. There's other values you can put into this. If you find a text blocks right here. You have all these things you can define, and it also inherits from the text-based class. So if you want to see those variables, click on that. Text-based has the default stuff like text color and text and opacity. These are all just things you might want to be aware of if you want to have a more custom looking text. But I'm keeping it pretty basic for this tutorial. So we're just going to do text and text color. After this, you want to add the alignment and the padding. I believe we did add padding for the text, so that's cool. Let me just double check to see that my alignment is correct. Text block. Center alignment and our padding is 10 on the top and bottom. So let's add in the padding. This is a margin. Top is 10 and bottom is also 10. Great. Last stack box we need is the one that has our button that allows you to vote. So stack box slot, our widget is going to be our button that we had as a parameter here. So my button. And just double check once again. We have no paddings, but we do have horizontal and vertical alignment. And that's it. Okay, so now we have our voting candidate class. What do we do with it? Well, let's go into our device, and we're going to add an array of these voting candidates. So we're going to call these voting candidates. Candidate. I don't know if this is the right spelling of candidates, but who cares? It's going to be of type square brackets to indicate an array, and then voting candidate to indicate the type. Set that equal to an array, and we're done. But currently this has no voting candidates in it, so we want to create some voting candidates. So voting candidate like this, and you'll notice that we need to define texture and name. So I'm just gonna do it in here. Texture is gonna be the texture we want in this first voting candidate. I have two textures to use, which is new logo and MS logo. So let's do MS logo first. And we also need to define the name. So name is going to be equal to OG logo. Vote on the OG logo. And that's one candidate, but we want more, or else it's not a vote. So I'm going to change this one to new logo. And change this also to new logo. As defined in my assets folder. And so now you have two voting candidates. You can add 3, 4, 5, however many you want, honestly. I would just highly recommend scaling your... just use the blueprint to figure out how much everything needs to be scaled and laid out. Ultimately, that's going to be what decides how you build your verse. But if you have another module here, you probably want to have a larger background image so that the overlay fits it. It's just a tip. But now you have your voting candidates, so let's go into our make canvas function and add them to our UI. So let's say VC in our voting candidates, referencing the array we created right here. So this, for every single voting candidate in the list, is going to do this, which is get our button. So my button is equal to get button, vc dot get button, and then my stack box, or we could call it my widget to keep it simpler. My widget is equal to vc dot get stack box, and we got to pass my button. Yeah, gotta add parentheses there. Okay. So that's pretty nice. Then we need to go into our voting stack box. We need to add a widget. And we're going to add a stack box slot. So just so that we don't have a weird long line of code, I'm going to create a stack box slot here. My slot is going to be old stack box slot. And this is going to have our widget being my widget. Go ahead and put my slot here. And let's go ahead and see. We have padding we set to 20. You don't have to do this, but you can if you want. Since we are going to have the verse be like really dynamic, I would recommend doing equal padding on both sides, so left and right. That way you don't have any weird alignments. So yeah, you'll see this is more evenly distributed. It's going to be in the center. You can add more if you want. If you want to do 20 and 20, I think that looks pretty good. So we're going to have left and right padding be 20 for all of these widgets. So padding is equal to margin. Left is going to be 20. And right is going to be 20. And we have our horizontal alignment to just fill. It's honestly not going to affect much. It's just not built to really be affected by much here. So you can go ahead and define those. Where can I just copy these, please? Let's just find them. Yeah, here they are. Copy. Paste. I love when I can make things simple. Change the center to fill, because that's what we have defined here. Fill. And that is everything you need for filling in your entire canvas. So when you think of voting, everybody has their own vote, right? Everybody makes their own decisions, and we need a way to store that in our device. There's additional things we need to store per player, including canvas and the buttons we create here. And just so that we have that, let's create another class that is just designed to store things. So we're going to call this vote info. It's going to be a class. And we're going to have a variable that is called vote, which is going to be of type int, which is an integer. And we're going to set this to -1. -1 being nothing, no vote, basically. We're going to have a variable of type, or we're going to call it buttons. It's going to be of type text button base. And that is going to be an array. Text button base means that any button, button loud, regular, quiet, is going to fit into this. So if you want to be custom with it or change things around, that'll work with it. So you have your buttons. You also need to have your canvas, which is just going to be of type canvas. Equals canvas. We're very, very simple. The best place we can define these this vote info is in the make canvas function. So we're going to pass an agent whenever we call this make canvas function. Agent equals agent. And basically at the end here, we want to create our vote info. So my vote info is equal to vote info. And so we're going to define the vote. Vote is going to be -1 by default, so we don't need to change that. We do need to change the buttons and canvas. So actually, let's move this vote info to the very top, because that stuff is kind of created throughout the program. So for VC and voting candidates, you make these buttons. We're going to set my vote info dot buttons plus equal to array, and then in curly brackets add my button. What this is doing is it's adding another button to the list of buttons. Self-explanatory. And then you want to add your canvas at the end here. So my vote info dot canvas. We want to set this equal to my canvas. Great. So now we have my vote info, but we really don't know who this is assigned to. The reason I passed an agent here is because we need to assign it to that agent. And the way we do that is we're going to create a map. What a map does is it basically maps variables to a player. Very, very useful. Very, very commonly used in Verse. So we're going to do var, and we're going to call this vote info per agent. The type is going to be in square brackets agent, which is the key of the map, and then a quotation mark followed by vote underscore info. And we're going to set that equal to map with curly brackets, basically saying they could or they could not have vote info. If they do have vote info, it's going to return the vote info. If they don't, it's going to return false. So we're going to set that here. And the way we do that is we do if parentheses set vote info per agent square brackets. The agent we passed here is called agent. Set it equal to option my vote info. Very, very simple. And then add curly brackets at the end to close off the if statement. Like that. So now we have vote info per player, which is great, very useful. But how do we declare their votes? How do we change their votes? We need to create a function for that. So we're going to call this change vote. Change vote. And the parameter, let's leave that blank for a second so I can explain where it comes from. It's going to return nothing. And let's just print changing vote. We're going to call change vote anytime this button is activated. So every voting candidate has their own button, and that button is going to call the change vote function. So my button dot on click parentheses dot subscribe, and then inside of your subscribe function add change vote. And that is what passes the widget message. So we're going to have widget message right here as our parameter. What widget message has, if you control click, has a player and it has a source. So whoever clicked it is the player. The source is the button that was pressed, which is going to be very useful in determining what they voted for. So once this is pressed, we want to get their vote info. So my vote info is going to be equal to vote info per agent at index wm.player, like that. And we need to do basically for every button in my my vote info. So be in my vote info dot buttons Oh yeah, we need to add a question mark here. It's an optional. Add a question mark there. Your errors will go away. For B and that, we're going to do a comparison. If B, which is the button that's currently being sorted through, is equal to our source widget, so widget message dot source prints correct button found, basically saying that it will go through every button that the player has on their canvas, and if this button is the one that they press, then it's going to change their vote. The way we change vote is we need an index. So index, add a little arrow here, arrow like that, index. We're going to set my vote info dot vote equal to index. So for the very first button is going to be index 0. Second button is going to be index 1. If you have 3 buttons, the third one is going to be index 2, etc., etc. So that's how we know what they voted on. So we're going to set their vote here. Works very well. And that's your change vote function. Before we proceed, we need to create a function to get players. This is going to seem a little bit redundant, but there is a bonus at the end of the video tied to getting specific players. But for now, it's going to seem redundant because we're just using a function that's already built in. So we're going to call this get players. It's going to return an array of players like this. So just return get play space dot get players. You need parentheses after each of these. Pretty simple. So the first thing we want to do is create a function that is going to count all of the votes from all the players. So let's call this count votes. It's going to return an array of integers. So let's just do return array right now. Very basic. We'll change that in a second. First, we want to get our players. So players is going to be equal to get players. And then for p in players, we first want to get if get their voting info. So my info, vote info is equal to vote info per agent. And we use p here, add a question mark so we get the vote info. Great, so we have the vote info. We also need to create our array of integers first. That's probably the first thing I should have said. So you'll notice in our voting candidates, we have X amount of voting candidates. That's the amount of integers we're going to need in our array. So if there's 0 candidates, 0 integers. If there's 2 candidates, 2 integers. And the way we make sure that that is correct is we're going to do for, if you see in voting candidates, so for every voting candidate that exists, we're going to add an integer to our array. So we're going to call this integer array of type int is equal to array. It's an empty array right now. We're going to set integer for every voting candidate that's in the code. We're going to set our integer array plus equal to an array, and we're going to have 0 here. So basically, it's going to add a 0 to our list for every voting candidate that is present. Once that's done, very simple. We're going to change our vote counts based off of our player vote info. So if set integer array at index my vote info dot vote plus equal to 1. Since our votes are based off of the index of our voting candidates, we know that if the player has voted for it, we're going to increment our integer array. And at the end, just return the integer array. And that's our count votes function. One last thing we want to do that's very basic, we want to remove the player's UI. So we're going to create a remove UI function. Remove UI. We're going to pass an agent and return nothing. So if my vote info is equal to vote info for agent, add agent question mark. Then we're going to do an if statement. Player UI is equal to get player UI. And we're going to use player brackets agent like that. Basically converts the agent to a player because get player UI relies on it being a player. If player UI is that, we also need to get their canvas. So canvas is equal to my vote info dot canvas. Then we are going to remove it from our UI. So player UI dot remove widget, and remove canvas. I misspelled remove. There you go. So now we need to add a function that adds the UI. So add UI, agent of type agent, return void. We're gonna do same deal here. If player UI, so get our player UI here. And then, so we have our make canvas function. We're going to make canvas. So canvas is equal to make canvas. Of course, we need agent pass into our make canvas function. Then we're going to add our canvas to our player UI. Player UI to add widget canvas. There's one more thing we need to add, and you can go into here. Input, I think it's, what's it called? Let's go into Unreal Engine to verify. We have our add widget function, player UI slot. Okay, so we need to add a player UI slot here. Player UI slot, curly brackets, and then we need to have input mode. Set that equal to UI input mode dot all. All basically means that's going to consume input so that people can press the buttons on the screen. So they won't be moving around, they will be pressing the buttons, which is exactly what we want for an interactive UI. So that's our add UI function. Works very well. So it actually does call our make canvas function, which is going to create your vote info as well. So that's everything you need for that. Lastly, you need to work on your start voting and stop voting functions. Our start voting function, we want to get our players. So players is equal to get players, like that. And, you know, for P in players, we want to add our UI. So add UI. And then when we stop voting, we want to remove the UI. So for P in players, I also have to get players first. So players is equal to get players. For P in players, we're going to remove UI. Like that. Of course, we need to tally and do all these other things. So we'll do that in a little bit. We do need to have a remove UI function connected to our back button, or our, I guess submit button. You can call this submit. That's better. Just call it submit. We need to tie a remove function to that. So we're going to call this remove UI, but instead, remember a button passes a widget message. So we're going to use a widget message here as a parameter. Type void. And it's basically going to be the exact same function, but you're using that parameter because that's what you're given. So move UI, you have your vote info. You can use wm.player instead of agent. And right here, since wm.player is a player, you don't need the conversion, so just wm.player. And that's your remove UI function. Make sure you tie it to your button. So back button dot on click dot subscribe remove UI. Let's name it something else so we just don't have any conflicts. Submit remove UI. Yeah, there you go. So our buttons, as you remember, should remember, they're supposed to count the number of votes that are present for that button. And we're going to create a update UI function that is going to handle that for us. So we're going to call it update UI, type void, and for every player, so players is equal to get players. We also have our count votes function right here. So we're going to get votes, count votes. And then we're going to do for every player, we're going to get their voting info. So my vote info is equal to vote info per agent, P question mark. And then for every button in my vote info dot buttons, we're going to set our text. So b.set text equal to s2m. Actually, let's do index here. Yeah, do index here. Do an if statements. So we want to get the integer from votes. If vote count is equal to votes at index. Make sure your count votes has parentheses. That's a very, very stupid mistake on my part. Anyways, so you get your vote count from your array of integers, and then you want to change the text of your button. So b dot set text, and we're gonna do s2m, and we're gonna do votes, vote count, like that. Remember, having brackets around it allows you to access the variable. So it's going to print the number. And then anything outside is just text. And then you close it with the quotation marks. S2N converts it to a message. And so for every button, it's going to get the correct amount of votes and update it on every single player's UI, which is going to be amazing. So now we need to work on our tally function. Tally will return an integer, which is going to be the index of the winning candidate. So we're going to return 0 just so we don't have to deal with the error messages. First thing we want to do is get our votes. So votes is equal to count votes. Pretty cool. We need two variables. So our first variable is going to be our winning indexes. What this is going to do is handle ties. So ints is equal to array, like that. And we also need our winning score, which is going to be a type integer, which is also going to be 0. And then for every vote in our votes, our counted votes here, we're going to do vote in votes. There's going to be two comparisons here. First, we're going to see if it's going to be the new winning score. So if vote is greater than the winning score, we're going to set our winning score equal to vote. And we're also going to set our winning indexes equal to array. We need our index here. So index arrow, like that. Our array is going to have index. What this is going to do is completely override our winning indexes. So it's only one element, which is our index. Otherwise, We're going to check to see if the vote is a tie. So if the vote is equal to winning score, then we are going to set winning indexes plus equal to array with index. What this does is it's going to add this as an additional element rather than override the array, which is going to be great for when we need to shuffle. So one more library you need to add is the verse.org/random library, because we need to randomize our indexes at the end here. So set winning indexes equal to shuffle winning indexes, like that. And then we're going to do an if statement. If winning index is equal to winning indexes at 0, which is the first element. So after it's shuffled, it's going to get the first element when it's shuffled. We're going to return our winning index. And just so that we have error control, we're going to return -1. If this does not succeed, then there's a major error with our code. Either there's not any candidates, or we'll know to fix something at least. So that's our tally function. So in our stop voting function, we want to call our tally. So winning index is equal to tally, like that. Then we can clear the players to remove UI. We want to go ahead and clear their voting info. So if set voting info per agent at p equal to false. What this is going to do is completely delete everything, but we've already removed their UI, so we don't need any of that information. We already did the tally as well, so we don't lose our vote. And then we're just going to use our winning index to get our voting candidate. So if VC is equal to voting candidates at index winning index, then we are going to simply call the activation function, which we have not specified yet. Don't worry. So vc.activate, we're going to go down here to our voting candidate class, and we're going to create this activate function. And just because it is one of the most versatile devices, we're going to use a trigger to activate. So just trigger.trigger like this. We're going to have a trigger device. So here, trigger of type trigger device, field trigger device. We're going to make this editable. And then class should be concrete, which basically allows you to edit things. So concrete is important here. There is an issue when I change it to concrete, which is that you have to initialize these variables. So you can do like a blank string, and texture, you just pick random texture, say garbage border, for example. You can they're still going to be defined here. When you change them here, they're still going to be defined, so you don't need to worry about these initial values. It's just necessary. Let's check the trigger device to see what events it has. So trigger device, there it is. Trigger, you can do it with an agent, or you can do it without one. Let's do it without. It is capital trigger.trigger. And from here, it's out of my hands. Whatever you want to do with the voting system, if you want to teleport the entire lobby, if you want to grant weapons, all of that is up to you. But this should activate it and count as the correct vote. So once again, you have a start voting trigger and a stop voting trigger. Start voting will assign the UIs, and stop voting will tally votes, get rid of the UIs, and then activate the winning candidate. You have all these awesome UI stuff. And, you know, that looks pretty good. Let's go test it. Real quick, I forgot to add one thing to the change vote function, which is the update UI. You got to call it, otherwise your buttons are not going to update. So anytime a vote changes from any player, we want to update our UI. Let's go ahead and put this after the if statement. So just update UI right here. That should work perfectly well. So now you're back in your editor, go to verse. You want to build verse code. Save selected. Go into your content drawer, verse devices or creative devices. Add your voting UI device. And you'll see we have we don't have a voting candidate, so one thing I forgot to tell you to add at editable to your voting candidates. And that should make them show up in your device. And there you go, voting candidates. So you have your triggers that are going to activate. Let's go ahead and place down our triggers. So trigger that. So we'll make these our start and stop triggers. Like this. And these are going to be our result triggers. Just so I have a timer that's going to disable the voting, I'm going to activate this when the start trigger is activated. So trigger from trigger 2 on triggered. And we need a delay, let's say a 5-second delay so we can vote. So when the start trigger is activated, the end trigger is going to be activating in 5 seconds, which is awesome. So trigger 2, trigger 1 is stop voting, and the other 2 triggers, very simply, just put them there. So now you can test. So now is what could be the most painful phase of the process, which is the bug testing. But hopefully you've prayed enough and your prayers are going to be answered. So you're going to step on your start voting trigger. Let's vote. Changes the vote number. I can change the vote to the other thing. And one of them activated. Let's see it again. This one should be the one that activates. Let's submit. Gets rid of the UI early. Let's vote for the other one. This one should be the one that is activated. Please, please, please. That's what I like to see. So it works. Here's a fun bonus. I was asked if this program would allow you to select specific players, like a specific team, for example. There's a really easy addition you can use for this. So we're going to add a player counter. So player counter of type player counter device is equal to player counter device, curly brackets. And in our get players function, instead of getting the get play space get players, we're going to dynamically set a player array. So we're going to call this player array. It's going to be of type player array, of course. And then we're going to do for p in get play space dot get players. And here we're going to check that they are within the player counter. So if player counter that is counted, and then we're gonna have square brackets and then put our player P in here. Basically, if they are counted by this player counter, we're going to set our player array plus equal to array with P. This is going to add them to the player array, which means that we know that they need to be referenced in our device. So we're going to return player array like that. And yeah, that's about all you need. So make sure that you have compiled your verse code and then added your player counter into your game. In this instance, I am only counting players from Team 2. So let's see that in action. You'll see I am Team 1 at the start. I'm not counted. If I step on this start voting, um, it doesn't give me the HUD. I'm not allowed to vote, but it does go through the voting process. Um, Otherwise, I can change to Team 2. You'll see I'm counted now. And if I step on the start voting button, I will get the option to change my votes like that. And it will do the voting. That'll be about it for this tutorial. If you found this helpful, please consider subscribing. It's free. I have a lot of content coming out pretty soon. And I would like to share these tutorials with as many people as possible. If you have anything you create with this, please tag me at maestro_shark on Twitter. Feel free to follow me there as well. And if there's anything you want to learn on top of this device, so any other modifications that you need for this voting UI, please comment down below, because I want to have a part 2 to this video where I run through all those modifications. Otherwise, that's it. So have a good day and good luck creating.